Well, good morning, Proximity Church and friends and family all across the internet. We are happy that you decided to join us this Sunday morning. My name is Javier, and again, thank you for joining us today. I know you could be doing a lot of things, but happy that you tuned in. Hopefully you give me the next couple of moments, and I believe that the Lord has a word for you for direction. The Bible teaches us that God's word is lamp to our feet and light to our path. So I'm believing that God's going to give you some direction today. But before we get started, I want to make sure I say happy Thanksgiving. I know it's a little bit late. It's a couple of days late actually, but happy Thanksgiving. We didn't get to see you guys on Thursday, but hopefully you spent some time with some family and friends. And if you didn't, we love you, and we can't wait to see you on next Sunday so we can give you a big, big hug. I don't know about you, and I don't know if you know this, but did you know that the feeling, this desire to give thanks is a universal desire. It's a universal experience. When something good happens, typically we feel gratitude or want to be thankful, or if we're on the tail end, if we're on the tail end of a crazy, long, difficult season, and you see the light at the end of the tunnel, and you're like, thank you, God, or thank you, Mom and Dad, or thank you, situation, depending on where you are in your journey of faith. But this attitude, this desire to give thanks, it's a universal thing. It's instinctive, intuitive. It's automatic, this feeling of gratitude. Some people say, thank goodness, right? Some people say, thank God. Either way, we thank something or somebody. And we are all instinctively thankful. And though we may express it in different ways, it's almost, and I want to make sure I say almost, like we can't help it. It's almost like we can't help but say thank you when we feel that desire on the inside of us. And I say almost because when it comes to the expression of thanksgiving or expressing our gratitude to each other is not always so instinctive, right? It doesn't always happen on automatic. Not only can we help it sometimes, oftentimes we don't do it. Oftentimes we withhold our gratitude, and when we do, we create distance. We create a gap. It's like if there's a circle and we fail to give thanks or to extend gratitude to a person, it's like the circle is not complete. Like there is this space between now you and I that needs to be bridged over. It's I don't know if this ever happened to you. I remember going to the store as a little kid, not the store, to the bank with my parents. I remember this vividly with my dad. And we would go to the bank, and as a little kid, this is one of those experiences. But you're in the bank, you're waiting in line. I don't know that we go to the bank anymore. Maybe you do. But if you ever went to the bank as a child, the teller usually had a lollipop for you or some candy for the little ones. And I remember always wanted to go because there was candy. And if you know me, you know that that's my vice. I love sugar. And so I remember going to the teller, and the teller giving me a piece of candy or a lollipop. And my dad instinctively said to me, "So what do you say?" And it's like for that moment, I was thankful, but my dad had to remind me that I had to close the circle. I had to narrow the gap. I had to close the gap between something awesome that was done for me and my extension of gratitude and thanksgiving. But to put it bluntly, and I guess we're just going to jump right in today. If this circle of gratitude, if I do something for you and you don't show gratitude, it creates a glitch in our relationship. And if it goes on for too long, it undermines the integrity of any relationship. Few things sting more or hurt more than ingratitude, right? You ever felt you were hoping for something, but you didn't get it? It's like you gave something, but there was something missing on the other side. Ingratitude communicates, I don't see you. I don't recognize what you've done. I don't recognize your efforts or your sacrifice. Ingratitude also communicates, you owed me that. You owed me that. So why would I thank you for that? Ingratitude stings because it isn't neutral. It's the opposite of what's expected or the opposite of what's due or what's earned or perhaps deserved. So it hurts. which is odd because the person on the other side, the person who was not grateful perhaps, or the person who didn't express their gratitude, they didn't really do anything to us, and that's the problem. They didn't do anything. You bought, or you thought they would hit the tennis ball back your way, but they didn't. They just let it hit the floor. So you did, you extended, you did something for them, you lend them your time, your talent, perhaps some of your treasure. And it's not like we do it to get a thank you, but it's like something is missing when they don't say thank you. It's like, man, I wish you could see how much that took. I wish you could see how much sacrifice that, or what that cost me to give that to you. Sometimes it doesn't cost a lot. But whether it costs a lot or a little, if we don't volley back the ball, there's a gap then there's created. There's this circle that's not completely closed. And there's few things that sting more than ingratitude. And at the same time, there are few things more uncomfortable than pointing out somebody else's ingratitude, right? It feels kind of childish, this idea, hey, what about a thank you once in a while? Would that hurt too much if you just said thank you for all the stuff I do for you? Or you didn't say thank you. You never showed me any appreciation. Who wants to say that? Because it makes me, the person, feel small or insecure. Not to mention when the other person responds with, I'm sorry. Like, okay, what do you do? What we hear is, I'm sorry, you little baby that needs so much constant reassurance and affirmation, right? That's not a good feeling for anybody. But ingratitude is a strange thing because it's not even a thing. It's a lack of a thing. But it doesn't always come packaged in silence or a lack of response. Sometimes ingratitude is actually expressed verbally. I want you to think about this. We do something for someone, and instead of saying thank you, they explain what they didn't do, that we didn't do it right, or that we chose the wrong color or the wrong size or the wrong. Can you imagine? You get somebody a shirt, right? You spent your money on it. You thought you saw it at the store, and just because it wasn't the color that they wanted to, oh, what a attention to manage there. It is not fun. Ingratitude is an absence of words or an absence of recognition of something we've done that deserves recognition. The other odd thing about ingratitude is that it looms large when we are the victim. It's all we see when someone else has been ungrateful. Isn't that true? Like they might not be able to recognize that they're being ungrateful, but the person that's doing the giving, oh man, that hurts. The recipient is always aware. The culprit is rarely aware. It's so odd. I have to be careful. Outside of my family, it's easy for me to write ungrateful people off. And if I just be honest with you, I don't have too many pet peeves, but one of them is ingratitude. If I extend my time, talent, or treasure for you in any capacity, small or big, there's one thing that will push me away from a relationship, or that is a tension that I have to manage because I know that's not what I'm supposed to do, right? I'm supposed to give relentlessly. I'm supposed to give as the Lord has given me. But if I'm honest, if I give and give and give and I don't sense appreciation, it doesn't have to be like, you don't have to make a party for me. You don't have to do something grand, but a simple, hey man, I appreciate that, or thank you for showing up, or thank you for doing that, or I appreciate that. Those things go such a long way. Gratitude goes a long way with me, and ingratitude does also. And there are people I would have a difficult time extending generosity with my time or influence or resources because of how they didn't respond the last time I was generous. I don't know if you've ever helped somebody and you went out of your way. I mean, you left your family, you left your friends, you left your job to go help somebody, and they never said thank you. How do you feel the next time they come around and they need something? It's like you have this hesitation. Like, I helped you move last time. Like, I went up all 3 flights of stairs to move that thing for you. And not even a thing. It's so funny. Nowadays, we do this thing where if you're going to help somebody move, you got to buy pizza and beer or pizza and Coke, whatever. I don't know how you roll. But anyway, like, that's a form of extension of gratitude. Like, hey, it's not a transactional, but this is my way of saying thank you. Like, at least let me get you some food, right? It's the least we could do sometimes for the sowing that somebody's doing in our life. My reason for bringing this up is this. Your accidental ingratitude, which you may not even be aware of, is leaving a mark. I want you to think about that. Your accidental, because it's usually accidental, because you usually feel it on the inside, right? But like you feel gratitude, but you don't always express it. So it's your accidental ingratitude that you may not be aware of is leaving a mark. It's undermining your respectability, and you may not even know it. The ungrateful people I struggle to not write off generally have no idea that I'm struggling with not writing them off because of their ingratitude. It's uncomfortable to talk about this because I'm 100% certain that there's people right now that are probably looking at this and saying, yeah, Jav, I would appreciate a thank you. And so, listen, if I've ever neglected to say thank you to you, I am so grateful, especially all the people that make Proximity Church be able to run, because I do a small piece. I mean, I prepare a message, but that's a small piece of all the things that happen with the kids and with audio and visual and setup and small groups. I'm so thankful for the people that are doing it as unto the Lord. But even though they're doing this unto the Lord, I just want to take a moment and say thank you. Let me have a question. Have you ever felt taken for granted? It's terrible, dehumanizing. If you've ever been accused of being ungrateful, you probably got defensive. The reason you did it is because you feel like you were being accused of not feeling something. You feel judged, so we get defensive. And I'm so totally grateful. I really am. But in the moment, I didn't express it. And so that's tough. Besides, how do they know how I really feel? Like if the person is accusing me of being ungrateful, how do they know that I'm not really grateful? Like on the inside. Like you can't read my heart. You can't read my thoughts, my mind. And generally speaking, we are grateful. They don't know how we feel. But we feel otherwise, so we push back. We may say, but I am grateful. I am grateful on the inside. But I want to share this with you today because this is going to take us to our discussion for the next couple of moments. Is that unexpressed gratitude is experienced as ingratitude. I'm going to say that again. Unexpressed gratitude. Like, if I don't tell you thank you, if I don't express my gratitude out loud, verbally, or I don't find a way to communicate, because we don't only have to use our words, right? But if we are unable to express gratitude, it is experienced on the other side as ingratitude. So it doesn't matter how you feel. You might feel super grateful that they did that for you. You might feel on cloud nine. You might be the most grateful person on the inside. But if you don't express that gratitude, it is experienced on the other side as ingratitude. So I want you to write this down. It is the expression, not the emotion, that counts. Yikes. So I want you to, right now you're thinking of people, man, I need to make sure I say thank you to this. I need to make sure I express because your emotions are there given to you by God, and those are great. But if you only feel the emotion of gratitude and don't express the emotion of gratitude, then it's experienced by the other person as the complete opposite of what you feel on. Isn't that crazy? Like you could have all the best intentions and feelings and motive, but if it never comes out of your mouth, if you never express it, that's tough. It is experienced as ingratitude. It's expressing our gratitude that completes that circle that I talked about, that closes that gap. It's not necessarily transactional, but it kind of is. It's like reciprocal. It's this tension we have to manage of closing this circle. It's like I'm getting a lollipop and I have to make sure I say thank you for the lollipop. Even though it wasn't the lady's lollipop, even though it was the bank's lollipop, even though she was probably told that she needed to give it to me. If there's a kid there, it's probably part of their customer service. It doesn't matter. But if my dad was quick to teach me that. What do you need to say? What do you need? Because there's something missing until we do that. The other thing I want you to know about gratitude and ingratitude are relationally determinative. Okay, and I'm going to explain that. They determine how much of yourself you're willing to entrust to somebody else and how much he or she is willing to entrust back to you. When we feel taken for granted, we instinctively withhold a part of ourselves in order not to be hurt again. You've experienced that. I've experienced that. Why would I continue to give to somebody that because of their ingratitude is making me feel horrible? Nobody wants to do that. So now it's determining how much of themselves they're going to give to us, and consequently how much of us we are willing to give to them. Again, gratitude and ingratitude are relationally determinative. They determine something about their relationship. Think about it this way. Our hearts gravitate towards recognition and gratitude. Yes or no? Like, it's not that you only do it for recognition and gratitude, but your heart gravitates to somebody that appreciates you. Like, okay, like I know you're probably sitting back, oh, Hob, that is so deep. No, I know it's not deep. I get it. But it's something we need to keep in the forefront of our minds, because the current of our society is going the opposite direction. It's do for me, serve me. What can you give me? And if we're not careful to close that cycle, we are going to lose something. I'm going to give you a tip before I get into the Bible, okay? If you're a young person or a teenager, listen up, okay? Because this is very important. If you're in middle school or high school and you're still living at home, don't tell your parents I told you this, okay? But if you want mom and dad to say yes more and no less, when you ask for things, when you ask for more freedom, be grateful for everything out loud as often as you possibly can. Listen, I'm a dad. And nothing moves my heart towards giving my kids more than when they say an unprovoked thank you. Like, I didn't have to tell them to close the cycle. I didn't have to go to them and say, hey, so what do you say? Right? No, if they just say thank you, like I want to give them the world. I remember my middle one, Micah. He is super tender. He is super aware, and he was one of the first ones that I remember having this feeling with, because I don't remember exactly what I did for him, but I remember him saying, "Hey, Daddy, thank you." Wait, what? What'd you say? Say that again. Thank. I'll give it back. I'll give it all to you. Thank you. Because nobody has to give you anything. Okay, you need to listen. It's not in my notes, but you need to listen. Do you understand that no one owes you anything? So anything that anybody ever does for you is undeserved by you. And therefore, you should say thank you, no matter how big, nobody has to say good morning to you. Nobody has to share anything with you. Nobody has to give you their time, their concern. Nobody has to text you and say how you're doing. Nobody has to give you a hug. But when they do, no matter the gesture size, no matter how big or how small, if you don't close the gap, if you don't finish the circle, you lose something. See, moms and dads, parents are accustomed. We're accustomed. We are already accustomed to being taken for granted. So if you're the typical middle schooler and high school, what I'm going to tell you is, hey, I know you think you deserve the cool clothes and you deserve the food and you deserve X, Y, and Z, because after all, we are your parents and we have to provide for you and we have to give you. And isn't that your job, mom and dad? Yeah, actually, no. By law, all I got to do is put a roof over your head, clothes on your back, and give you something to eat. That's it. Everything else is extra. So, Dad, what are you saying? Those shoes, extra. Xbox, extra. Phones, extra. Treats, extra. I don't got to give you no sweets. Everything is extra. Everything you should all, even the things that are demanded by the law here in the West, you should always say thank you. You should always say thank you. Now, there's this famous story from the life of Jesus that I want to jump into now, because the Bible, believe it or not, addresses this. And this is why I'm telling you need to read your Bible, because think about how many years ago this was penned, and it's still so applicable to us right now. So I'm going to jump really quick to the book of Luke, chapter 17, verse 11. And I taught from this about 4 or 5 years ago, so if you've been with us for that long, you're going to be an expert at this because you heard it once already, okay? Luke chapter 17, verse 11, it says, "Now on his way to Jerusalem, Jesus traveled along the border between Samaria and Galilee. It was a remote, and it wasn't a very populated region." Verse 12, "As he was going into the village," watch this, 10 men who had leprosy met him. Okay, so I want you to catch the vision. Jesus is walking. 10 men with leprosy roll up to him and begin to try to talk to him. Now, these 10 men were hovering between life and death. They stood at a distance, always at a distance, watching other people live their lives. Because see, in the ancient times, leprosy was considered highly contagious in a culture that required a lot of physical labor and for you to be able to survive. Remember, they couldn't work from home. They didn't have a computer they could take home and be isolated in their bedroom and do their thing. No, you had to be around people. You had to work where the people were. So this often resulted in people having to work with their hands. And if you had leprosy, you were more prone to injury. You were more prone to have to survive. Their bodies were visibly deteriorating over time. Now, the law required lepers to live like on the outskirts of the town or in a designated area. And they also had to warn people. Like when they were coming through, like a leper's coming through. Can you imagine, like you have a disease and every time you walk by something, like they could probably see it, but maybe you were covering up. But it didn't matter if you covered it up. You still had to let people know that you were coming. Oh, man, that's tough. It would come as no surprise also that for the people reading this in the first century, that community of lepers were finding a way to still create a life for themselves in the remote borders of the town, predominantly Jewish territories. And this area was inhabited also by Samaritans. So let's continue reading in verse 12. So these lepers, they stood at a distance, right? They stood at a distance and called out to Jesus in a loud voice. They said, "Jesus, Master, have pity on us." They recognized Jesus by his reputation when they called out Master. It was unusual because to call somebody a master, it was a term that you would use if you were that teacher's disciple already. You were already a follower, which clearly they were not. But desperate times call for desperate measures. So if you caught wind that a healer was coming into town, whether you were a follower or not, you were going to shoot your shot. Your master, teacher, whoever you are, help me, right? Verse 14. When he saw them, talking about Jesus, he says, "Go." Now let's stop right there. That was not what they were expecting. They heard for years, "Go," but probably they heard, "Go away." But he said, "Go, show yourselves to the priests," to which they must have thought, "Go show them what? There's nothing to show them. Besides, the priests aren't all that anxious to see us anyway." Nobody is. But Jesus had a couple of intentions with telling them to go to the priest. Now watch this. According to the law, anyone with a skin disease after being quarantined had to go to a local priest to be given the all clear before re-entering society. So by implications, by the time that you got there, you guys would be clear of your disease. That's what Jesus was trying to tell them. Go show yourself to the priest. And they're probably looking at themselves like, well, we can't go to the priest unless we're all cleared already. But the implication was, go, because something awesome is going to happen on the way. I think this is awesome because sometimes we wait. We want to see it before we move. But Jesus was teaching them and teaching us something. He was saying, go. But by the time you guys will get there, your skin will be cleared. Think about this. When 10 ex-lepers show up, it's going to be really hard to say that was not a miracle. And maybe one was a fluke, but 10 who were sick, and now they're not 10 who were full of leprosy, are now not full of leprosy. If nothing changed on the way, they would be making a fool of themselves. But their willingness to go before anything had changed would certainly be an expression of extraordinary faith in Jesus. Now, I want you to think about this. Imagine your life. Imagine you had leprosy. You bump into Jesus. You ask Jesus, "Jesus, can you do something?" And he says, "Yeah, go. Go show yourself to the priest." Something you know you can only do once you're healed. But Jesus is telling you to go. What does that teach us? What does that say to you and me about having enough faith to trust Jesus at his word? It makes me think of Noah building the ark. It makes me think what he must have gone through before he saw any rain. Can you imagine building this massive ark and there's no rain inside? All the criticism he probably faced. But he took God at his word. It reminds me of this saying that I heard before, like, yo, if God tells you to run through that wall, start running and pray that he makes a hole in the wall, right? It's this idea of having an eternal yes to God. It's this idea of saying, God, I'm going to trust you. Now, I know this is not easy. I know what I'm asking you to do, what I'm trying to teach you to do through God's word is not something simple, but it's a place where we have to try to strive towards. That's all I'm saying. Try to strive towards a place that when you hear God say something or you read something in his word and where God's giving you explicit instructions, say yes. It doesn't make sense, but it's in his word, so say yes. It doesn't look like it's supposed to look before I go, but say yes. I'm telling you, it's those acts of faith, it's those little steps in the right direction that make all the difference. You'll never obey God in something great if you first don't obey him in something small. Be faithful in the little. All right, let's keep reading. Verse 14. And as they went, this is awesome, they were cleansed. They literally walked by faith. They responded to the promise and prompting of Jesus before they knew the outcome. That's what walking by faith is. I'm heading your direction, God. I'm saying yes to you before I see my situation change. That's really challenging for me, if I could be just quite honest. So I'm a numbers guy. I'm a see it first guy. I'm as practical of a person as you know. So walking, trusting a God that I cannot see requires extraordinary faith. But you know what? I wouldn't be able to make some of those big steps of faith if I first didn't learn to obey him in the small things like forgive. Yeah, like forgive as many times as you need to. Well, you mean if they did something wrong to you, Pastor, they got to... No. No matter who's at fault, you go forgive. You initiate that. You go trust, give, serve, love. You start in those small areas. Then the story... twist, and here's verse 15. It says, one of them, when he saw he was healed, came back. How many? One of them. How many went? 10. Yeah, you're paying attention. How many came back? One. Let's stop right there. Do you want to be the one or you want to be the other 9? How do you think this story is? Like, we have the book, right? So we know how the story ends. But if you were hearing this for the very first time, who do you think you want to be? The one who went back? One of them, when he saw he was healed, came back, praising God in a loud voice. He threw himself at Jesus' feet and thanked them. There was no more social distancing, right? He walked upright and fell at Jesus' feet. He wasn't content to feel grateful. Listen, he wasn't content to feel grateful. He demonstrated it. Now, the journey back from where Jesus was to where the priest was, back to where Jesus was not a here to there type of walk. This was a journey. Days, perhaps. So think about his mental disposition or his attitude. He was like, man, something great has happened. I have to demonstrate. I have to express my gratitude. It's not enough to feel the gratitude. I got to get out of my comfort zone and go think the person responsible for me being able to go to work, for me being able to be back with my family, for my life to be turned around. As much as he wanted to go back to living among the living, and as much as he wanted to put all of the stuff behind me, he knew he had to close that circle. He knew he had to go back. So he did what we all need to do. Put this up there for me, Josh, if you would. He went back to the one who enabled him to move forward. He went back to thank the one who enabled him to move forward. That's super important, and you need to listen. You need to listen very careful. This man had an opportunity. He didn't have to go back. It was his choice. All the other people around him, his circle of friends, the people around him, none of them went back, but he went back. He went back to thank the one who enabled him to move forward. Thank you, Josh. I appreciate that. Now I want to stop here. I got a couple more minutes worth of notes, but I want you to listen. Right now, the Lord is probably putting people or a person in your mind and in your heart. And you have to decide today, don't leave it for tomorrow, you're going to forget. You have to decide today, am I going to be the one or am I going to be like the 9? My prayer is that you are like the 1. That you would take a step and go back to thank the one who enabled you to move forward. Verse 16. Oh, I love this. Verse 16, watch this. He says, and plus he was a Samaritan. So he threw himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him, and he was a Samaritan. So he was the only one, by default, he was probably the only one that was not a Jew. Can you imagine, like, the people that you expect to come back and give thanks? It was the person that you don't expect that came back and gave thanks. What a powerful thought. I believe the reason for this seemingly unimportant details comes to light when you read everything that Luke writes. Because when you read the Gospel of Luke, you are very aware that it were the people that were least like Jesus that were always the most thankful for Jesus. It was the sinners, it was the people that you wouldn't assume would associate with Jesus, that Jesus associated with, and that Jesus loved. And well, although Jesus loved all, but the people that loved him back were typically the people that you didn't expect would love him back. Matthew, Zacchaeus, the prostitute, the woman at the well. Like, we could go on and on. It's this people that you wouldn't think would be the ones. They weren't the church folks. They were the outsiders that would come and give thanks. Oof. Story doesn't end there. Verse 17. Jesus asked, were not all cleansed? Where are the other 9? Uh-oh. Jesus isn't expecting an answer. He's making an observation. Something is missing. Some ones are missing. The other 9 have missed the moment. They missed the opportunity, and consequently, they weren't able to close the circle. And the opportunity to close this transaction, if I could call it a transaction, or a best practice, if you will, that opportunity was lost. But it wasn't lost for one. So we think, man, how ungrateful of these 9 others not to come back. Now, before you're too harsh on these people that didn't come back, okay, if we were to interview them, they would tell us, what do you mean? I'm super thankful. I'm super grateful. I get to go home. I get to have a life. I was sick and now I'm healed. But the difference between the 9 and the 1 is that only 1 went back and was grateful. 1 went back and said, thank you. What a lesson for you and me today. The problem was not that they didn't feel it, or not that their lives weren't forever changed. It was the fact that they didn't express it. They could have been super grateful in their heart, but what does that matter if the person cannot hear you and hear your gratitude? I hope you're listening this morning. Let's keep going. Verse 18. Has no one returned to give praise to God except this foreigner? Ouch. Jesus is teaching. Only 1 returner? The question is really a rebuke, right? It also implies the other lepers may have been Galileans like Jesus rather than Samaritans. Then verse 19, then he said to him, rise and go. But this is a different kind of go. Rise and go. Sorry, I lost my notes. Rise and go. Now, I want you to think about what's happening here. They were cleansed. 1 of them comes back. The other 9 do not. Jesus is like, we're not all 10 cleansed. Where are the other 9? The other 9 missed that opportunity. Has no one returned to give praise to God except for this foreigner? Then he said to him, rise up and go. Then Jesus makes this concluding statement. He says, your faith has made you well. In other words, your trust in me has healed you. What a powerful lesson for you and I. So I want to say 3 things before I wrap things up today. The first one we already touched on. The first one is this. Unexpressed gratitude communicates ingratitude. You need to remember that. As much as you feel it, as much as it's in your heart, as big as those feelings may be. Because if I told you if I told you, for instance, let's just use me as an example. If I told you, man, I think you're ungrateful for all the things I've ever done for you. You know what you would say? No, I'm super grateful. But it's one thing to feel it. It's another thing to express it, right? Vice versa. If I never told you, thank you, I might feel it, but if it's not communicated, it's not enough, all right? The second thing that I want to tell you is ingratitude feels like rejection, right? Ingratitude. So over time, unexpressed gratitude has the same effect on a relationship as rejection. It creates a gap. It creates a distance. Again, our hearts gravitate towards acceptance, real or imagined. Appreciation feels like acceptance. Let me ask you a question. Since appreciation feels like acceptance, do you want like the heart of your spouse or your child, your son or daughter, or a friend? Do you want the heart of your child or spouse? Then you need to express your gratitude. If you want to be surrounded by people who do what they have to do by withholding gratitude, then take them for granted. If you think, Pastor, they get paid for that. Why do I got to say thank you if I pay them? If that's their job. Well, do you want them just to do what they're supposed to do, or do you want their heart? But Pastor, she's my wife. She's supposed to. Pastor, he's my husband. He's supposed to. Yeah, remember what I said earlier? Nobody owes you anything. If you don't, listen, I'm not going to tell you what not to hear, but no one owes you anything. Nobody owes you a single thing. So if ever someone does anything for you, big or small, if you feel appreciation, if you feel thankful, don't hold the emotion, express it with your words. Number 3. Unexpressed gratitude may indicate an inflated view of yourself. Like if you're unable to say thank you to somebody, then you probably think too much of yourself. The message of ingratitude is, or what it communicates is this: I could have done this without you, so that I don't really owe you anything. Arrogance and ingratitude are generally found under the same rock. Arrogant people are usually ungrateful people. Ungrateful people come off as arrogant people. So let's be honest for a moment. In the wake of, anything positive you've ever done, professionally, academically, relationship, or financially, there are dozens of people who helped you get there. Who do you need to go back and close that circle of gratitude with? Dozens of people. Acknowledging their help is not weakness, it's maturity. It's evidence that you've let go of an inflated view of yourself and you realize that, hey, I really can't do anything without you. Or I couldn't have done that specific thing without you. So thank you. Thank you for giving me, however big or small, because you don't owe me anything. And anything you do for me, I should be grateful for. So in conclusion, when somebody tells you a story, when somebody tells you your story, or when somebody tells a story about you, do you want to be the one or the other 9? I hope you'd want to be the one, because gratitude that we feel but don't express is simply ingratitude by another name. So let's close the loop. Let's get in the habit of circling back around. Let's be returners. Let's be people who decide to go back and be grateful. So I got 3 questions for you. I got 2 minutes left. So I got 3 questions. I'm going to boom, boom, boom. So listen up. Number 1, this is for you to think about. Who is the most grateful person that you know? And when you think about them, what are some of those feelings that come up when you think about the person who you know is the most grateful, right? I got 2 people in my mind, my wife and Quincy. No matter how big or small the gesture, they always let me know how appreciative they are of what I'm doing. Number 2, when have you felt the most taken for granted? What was said or not said that heightened that feeling? How did you respond internally? Think about those feelings. When did you feel the most taken for granted? What was said or not said that made that feeling big, and how did you respond? This is important for you to start fleshing out. Maybe some of the people you need to go back and close that circle or close that cycle. And number 3, to whom do you owe a verbal debt of gratitude? Who has facilitated your progress but hasn't heard from you lately? Because listen, I'm going to tell you something. Saying something nice or having gratitude about somebody else when they're not in the room does not count. Marriage folk, I'm going to tell you something. Talking good about your husband or your wife and saying all the wonderful things that they do and how amazing you feel about them, how amazing they are when they're not in the room to somebody else does not count. Take my wisdom. Take my advice. Learn from my mistakes, okay? Say it yourself. Who do you need to go to and say, thank you? Go back and give thanks. Close the loop. Close the circle. Be the one that goes back. Let me pray for you this morning. Heavenly Father, I thank you so much for all who hung in there these whole 40 minutes and listened to your word. I pray that it would bring direction, conviction, and Lord, that names would come up of people that they have to contact, people they have to reach out to. And as they come up, you have to say their names. You have to close that circle. So God, help us not be hearers of your word, but be doers. Continue to teach us what way to go. And we'll be careful to give you all the glory and all the honor. We love you and we thank you. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, family, I love you. Thank you for tuning in. If this message was a blessing, do me a favor, just share it right now, real quick. I'll wait. Yeah, press a button, 3 little buttons or a little arrow. Share that. Post it on your feed. Send it to somebody. Maybe it's somebody you need to say thank you to. I don't know. Find a way. Communicate and do what the Lord has taught you to do today. God bless you. We love you. And we'll see you next week. Peace.